this is also why I don't like BIPOC as a denominator for a bunch of people, because the dark skinned Black experience is not the same thing as the light skinned dark experience, down to how many people have died in COVID, right? Mm-hmm. There's a divide along the color lines that we are not talking about. Mm-hmm. So we say that, oh, Black people have this experience. I'm looking like, baby, my dark skinned Black ass has a very different experience than your non-dark-skinned Black ass. Mm-hmm. And the idea that my bringing up something makes me divisive or that makes me racist is your way of gaslighting me.
What's good, everybody? I am Donovan.
And I'm Constanza Eliana.
Welcome to Stranger Fruit. All right, so today we're having a very interesting conversation about unity in POC. And unless you've been living under a rock, you can know that things are a little bit of a mess. So the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, I'm going to start out with a little anecdote, is because I want to start tackling anti-Blackness, period, all over the place, wherever it resides. And when we were casting for this show, my co-host and producer and I, and the team, it was so fucking hard to find people of color who are willing to have this conversation with us. So I just want to start off by saying that. And then I want to get really, really personal and ask y'all, do you think, based on what we've been experiencing, what you've seen, that unity in POC, just the term POC and BIPOC, does that mean anything to you? Do you feel like that's real? Do you think that that is something that is actually in existence where there's unity? And when I think about, once again, pandemic times, we think about like what happened when George Floyd died. I mean, the way that all of the, I would say from the news to the blogs to the influencers, everybody's marching, everybody's talking about how this is terrible. And for the first time, right, we can acknowledge like, wow, we see this wide array of different kinds of people saying enough is enough. I was like, whoa, I'm clutching my pearls. Like, is this a real thing? Like, do these people actually give a fuck? And then I saw anti-Asian violence happening, right? And on the grapevine, we'd had conversations about that, got to speak to the community about that. That was very interesting. We also saw legislation be moved as a result of anti-Asian violence, right? Which we also, I think there was a lot of criticism about that. But the biggest thing is that a lot of times, I said this on Twitter before, it's about energy. We had that energy for a moment, and I loved it. It was fantastic. But do y'all feel like that energy still exists now? Do you feel like that's around? Katelina, go ahead.
Absolutely not. It's a token moment. In the Latino space, I saw a lot of performative solidarity, saw a lot of tokenism. I saw a lot of attempts to tokenize me that I did not engage with. I just feel like it's something that, like this unity, it's something that, yes, it exists in theory. It's a very nice theory. It's a cute fantasy. It's cute. But in actuality, in regards to the actual efforts that need to be taken and made in order to provide equity or work towards it, I think people really recognize in that moment, where they stood on that scale in regards to the harm that they produced, right? And in which case, a lot of people did not like that mirror being held up to them, right? So a lot of white guilt, a lot of, I'm not like that, I'm not racist, I'm a good person. That's something I hear a lot in the Latino space, particularly by white Latinos, right? Who don't recognize that, like, you know, being a good person doesn't, you know, take away your participation in racism, right? Yeah, I feel like that's the best way I can answer that. Like, there's a lot of performative solidarity and a lot of pain that I feel like pain is, it's not only warranted, but it's something that, you know, should be respected. You know, when do we get to be angry? You know what I mean? And when does that get to be respected? I feel like that time was special because it allowed for a lot of people to finally listen to Black Latinos in the space. But also, I just feel like the repercussion of that has been, you know, a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's something that I am met with the audacious response of like, it happened 2 years ago.
My God.
We're better now." You know, like, we have you. I'm like, don't do that.
Tokenism that you were mentioning before.
They try it, you know? We have you. We have people like you. I'm like, who else besides me? I don't see nobody. Like, oh. I'm like, yes, exactly. You know, like, I am not a solution. One Black person in one room is not a solution.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
And to your point, I agree that I believe it was a lot of performativeness happening in all these different spaces. And like you said, yeah, when the George Floyd situation happened, and we were seeing all these different types of people coming out for the marches and all that, it was nice. But I was sitting back because I was like, something ain't right about this here.
Something in the water.
Something's in the water. And for me, it came clear when people started rioting, like when things started getting a little violent because we were so upset. I don't know if I was watching the same news as everybody else, but the people that I saw on the front lines were all Black people. And it seemed like this unity that we had kind of fell to the back. Like when it was peaceful and it was all walking and holding hands, holding signs, it was good. But once the dogs and the hoses came out, where was everybody at? And so for me, that's why even the term people of color, to me, is a way, it seems like it's a way for other, you know, races, ethnicities, whatever you want to call them, to have one foot in, one foot out. So it's a way to be under the big umbrella of oppression and be aligned with, you know, Black people and with people who are being oppressed. But then you can choose when you want to be in it and when you want to be out of it, because you're still not talking about the anti-Blackness that you have contributed to the whole situation. So I don't even like the term, and to me it's too close to the word colored. So it also gives me a little PTSD. It's like it's too much. Like what? It's too much for me.
Thank you, Juice. Eliana, I actually want to jump you into this really quickly too, because, you know, you're behind the scenes. You saw the process of trying to get people of color to have this conversation and how fucking hard that is. Do you think that people of color, especially people who are not Afro-Latino, for example, identify, you know, from a phenotype of Blackness or very brownness, where you're just, oh yeah, you're one of them. How do you feel about whether or not people are ready to have this conversation in the POCs?
I think people say that they're ready behind the scenes, and that was one of the things that I experienced a lot of, is people are having a lot of online conversations, and to your point, that feels very performative to you. And what I was witnessing was, well, if people are having these conversations online, they definitely want to come to the show and have it in person. And what we experienced was the opposite. There was a lot of people that were like, yeah, no, I'm interested, but. And so I think that, you know, for me, being a part of the show and being invited to the show, y'all, Donovan is my boss. And I really respect that, right? I respect the fact that I am invited into this conversation. And what was really disappointing for me was inviting other people to come to the conversation, South Asians in general, Latinos, and them not taking that invitation seriously. And does it feel that way to you, that they didn't really take the invitation to come to the table seriously in the last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whoever?
I don't think it's that. I think there's an anxiety behind accountability.
Yeah.
And where you can have these conversations online and there's that degree of separation, that third wall between you.
Right.
It's different when you have to look somebody in the eye and they tell you, like, you haven't supported me. There's an anxiety that people have there and having to own that.
Right.
And so I think they took it so serious that you're scared to show up because you're like, I don't know if I'm walking into somewhere where everybody's going to be attacking me. Am I going to have to represent all of my people? Like, what do I do here? And some of us are used to doing it and take that and put that on our backs and carry it, but it's not for everybody.
And
so
do
a
you
lot
think
of times that happens.
And do you think that comes from this idea of like cancel culture and all of these things like happening at the same time? Because not only have we had the pandemic, but we've also had that point too where we want to strive for accountability culture, but everyone's calling it cancel culture. And then we're having the protest on top of that. And then we're having separate conversations about anti-Asian hate. There's a lot going on at the same time. Do you think that's part of it? That anxiety?
Yeah, I think all of that comes into it. I just think for me, particularly with Black people, I think we're used to being held accountable. So for us, it's not an unfamiliar water to walk in, whereas other people are not used to being held accountable. And so there's a higher level of anxiety for them because now it's like, I don't even know where I'm at right now. Well, we're always used to people pointing the finger at us and saying, this is what you did, you need to admit it. We're used to that. Other people are not. And so their anxiety is a lot higher than us, and they also don't know how to handle it like we know how to handle it because it's been forced upon us for so long.
Can I add to that
yes,
what's in it for me, right? So this whole idea of POC and this unity train, nobody's willing to go to the final destination. And so people are falling for symbolism, which is why it feels like it was performative. So like when the symbolism happens, Nancy Pelosi kneeled. Okay, I can get off the train. We fixed racism. Like the POC, we're all unified. And so the next stop is, okay, they passed this legislation. Okay, I'm getting off the train. And so what you're feeling like that accountability is people are not willing to stay on to the final destination. Like, what are you willing to actually do? Because words are nice, but where are the actions? Right. And who's going to be willing to stay on that train to the final stop? A lot of people are really big talking about it, but they're not really willing to do anything.
But look what you're asking them to do. We're asking people to literally dismantle the very identities that they were born into, right? So now you have to look at your mom. You have to look at grandma. You have to look at the intergenerational passing of the anti-Blackness that has gone from one generation to the next to the next. You have to look at yourself, and all of a sudden now you have a new identity, oppressed, oppressor. How many people are ready and willing to contend with that particular identity, right? Because that still requires work, because in acknowledging that you are an oppressed oppressor, you're acknowledging that you have something to heal from, but that you also have work to do so that you don't harm others. And quite frankly, I find that people like to give lip service to what it means to acknowledge and really see others, but they don't want to actually walk that walk because it's work. It is a lot of work. And it's a lot of work coming off COVID, right? It's a lot of work, period. But coming off COVID, coming off loss of jobs, loss of housing, loss of friends, family members, all these deaths that happened because of COVID, and now these other rights that are the things that you thought was going to be around for a little while longer are now gone. So we're living in this space of uncertainty. And now we're asking people to further examine their identities. Now, I'm not saying don't ask them. I'm saying that they're not always going to be willing to go there, to go that extra mile, to do that extra step. And so people pick it up and put that shit down whenever the fuck they feel like it. And then they look at me while I'm like, you want to be an ally, I give it to you after you die.
I need an ally, I need an accomplice.
Word. I'm looking like ally, accomplice,
I need an accomplice.
co-conspirator. We need all three, but I'm just like,
I think it also has to do with, do they really want to give up their place on the hierarchy of society, like of global society, not just American society?
That's a hard no.
They just want to
they don't really want to give up that power that they have. Like, I'll go out and march temporarily or show my solidarity with this little black box on Instagram, but still not about me. It's still not affecting me. I'm still above Black people, you can say. And I also think part of it, like with other communities, like South Asian communities, other Asian communities in particular, it might also just be and of course I can't speak for those entire communities, but maybe like a forgetting of history with looking at movements in the past between like South Asians and Black people in particular. Like if you go to the UK from the 50s to the 80s, Black and like Tamil people were coming together and fighting for fighting against oppression with like the Institute of Race Relations, and also just the discrimination they were having in like British society. You can look at Trinidad in like the 70s with like Black and South Asian people coming together fighting for like labor rights. So I think there's just like a forgetting that maybe the younger generations, particularly in the US, have because of this like model minority myth that is here.
Right.
So I think, that's part of it.
I think it's willful ignorance though, because if you look at the history,
Yeah.
they were on board and then they sued to be white. So that's why they don't want to remember it, because they were on board until they got the rights, and then when Congress said that only white people could have this rights, then they sued to be white. So
See the math? You see how that math is mathing?
Right, and there's a lot of history with that too, with Latinos also. A lot of brown Latinos who are visibly brown, not white passing, visibly brown, were being put on the census and checking off the Caucasian box.
Cubans?
Cubans but literally any brown person that wasn't phenotypically Black, they were checking off the Caucasian box. And I want to ask y'all about just the term POC, BIPOC, all of that. You know, BIPOC was actually created by a Black woman to include Black folks so that they weren't being erased from the POC label. But how do we feel about that label? Is it being used properly? Do we subscribe to it? Do you just prefer Black? Like,
I prefer Black.
yeah.
I would say
You wouldn't tell me that my t-shirt is BIPOC. You tell me that it's Black.
Right.
And I think we use those terms to remove Black.
For me, it's like double-edged, because I get how under white supremacy and oppression, we all experience oppression or white supremacy. But at the same time, I feel not even necessarily just erased, but I feel like now that I know that a Black woman started, I get in regards to my opinion, okay, look, in the grand scheme of things, oppression, we all experienced it. However, the other side that I don't fuck with it is because it's being used wrong, because now it's being used to center whiteness. So I feel like, and this is what I mean by center whiteness. White people try to use it as a way of saying, okay, BIPOC. Right. Because if, again, we know Black people aren't a monolith, but if we combine all you brown and Black folk together, then I don't have to be held accountable or understand that, you know, as a Latina, I'm gonna treat you differently as a Black person. And as an Indian person, I'm gonna treat you differently than a Filipino. Right. So when I just put you and lump you in as BIPOC, oh, you know, we got the token, people, everything's good. Right. And I feel as if it centers whiteness in regards to, it's also, what's the other word? Making it more palatable for them, so they're not held as accountable. You know, if I see you all as just this Black and brown blob of people, then I'm not going to have to acknowledge that, you know, I've given certain people in this BIPOC community certain privileges because they were closer to my whiteness, or because they made me more comfortable because they were lighter skin. And as a result, I feel like that's why we talk about like privilege and the allyship. We talk about the train, like when did they get off? I mean, if I had a privilege, I'm not going to give it up. Yes, I know that like, and the other thing about it is, which also is a mind fuck, is oftentimes when you have Black and brown folk, because how colorism works, tell me if I'm wrong, but normally, it's not even about biracial, it's like normally even in Black and Latin culture, all cultures, there's usually the man is dark skinned and the mom is light skinned. And usually you might have a brown or lighter skinned child. So then it's also this weird dichotomy that you might have the father who seek out a lighter skinned person so their children could be lighter, so they don't have to go through the bullshit that other POC would give to a darker skinned person. Right. Or you might have the lighter skinned mom who's like, look, I like Black men because my dad or my mom were Black, but because, you know, bloodlines, I'm just so happen to be lighter skinned. So then they may be trying to project that notion of, okay, look, yes, I may not be like you, but you are this. So there's this weird dichotomy of, are some Black and brown people in a BIPOC community who acknowledge that there's light skin privilege and colorism and things like that, are they trying to dismantle it, or are they also trying to
keep up with it because again it gives them power and privilege.
I love what you said at the end, because what it alludes to is what, you know, basically the establishment of Latin America as a whole with mestizaje. There was literally like a social order that was put out in order to brown everybody. And we've seen this. So like the theory of like BIPOC was already like materialized all throughout Latin America. It was on purpose. They had European people like come into Latin America to like have sex with black people to brown everybody. You know what I mean? So this was literally, this is like an example of something that already is like institutionalized even on a bigger level. And how's it going for us? Horribly. Because like the legacy continues. Black Latinos, dark skinned Black Latinos are still left here, right? And white Latinos are still here. That hierarchy still exists, no?
That's exactly what I was going to say, because when I even hear the term black and brown, it's just reminding me of the erasure of those of us who are Black and Latino exhibit already. So we say Black and Latino, you erase all of the Black Latinos in that statement immediately. In fact, they're trying to legislate to do it. So they're trying to redefine Blackness, because unlike on Twitter where everybody claims to be Afro-Latino, everybody with a curl pattern, who actually checks that black box on the census is way less. Like maybe 10% of the people that are on Twitter. So whenever you ask for like the Afro-Latino opinion, it's not people that look like me, not people that look like Katelina, it's the people that look like Dasha Polanco, right? But the people that are actually checking the mark on the box is less. And so now they're trying to legislate to redefine to not include those people as Black. So the view of us that are actually Black, that identify as Black, now we're not getting credit for being Black.
I never thought about it that way. I never thought about it.
Because it's like whitewashing. You're now saying you're not. It goes down again, centering whiteness. It's like you're not as Black, but you're light enough that I feel comfortable that you won't challenge me on the anti-Blackness that I give to your Black and brown counterparts. So, and also you're gonna put a Zoe Saldana above someone who's more dark skinned, because again, she's Latin, so she's checking it off for diversity, but she's more palatable to a white person in Midwest, or she's not. And it's so weird because we have associated Black features with, we politicize so much Black features that oftentimes when you see a Black person speaking on politics or about colorism or this idea of interracial like issues, some white people are literally uncomfortable and so scared just by seeing the image of like a Black person talking about it, because it's like, she's gonna make me feel bad, and oh my God, she's just so aggressive, and oh my God, I don't like how she's making me feel, when reality it's not even aggressive, it's just passion, but also it's truth. But also the issue is not that person, it's you. Like, why does a white-nosed, like 4C person with dark skin make you so uncomfortable that you can't see them depicted in movies and films, or speaking up, or
as the Little Mermaid?
Yeah, like what's wrong with
as
that?
the Little Mermaid. So
I want to bring Jimmy into this because you're Haitian, and Dr. Kristina, are you Haitian as well?
Yeah.
So you all are Haitian, and I want to like take this moment to acknowledge the fact that y'all share an island with the Dominican Republic, and oftentimes are left completely out of the conversation of being Latino. So I want to know from y'all's perspective, especially Jimmy, I'll let you speak because you haven't spoken yet. How do you feel about being quote unquote a part of the community, but often being left out? Do you feel connected at all? And how do you feel about the POC conversation when you share the island with folks who we do determine to be POC?
Well, geography doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't reflect who Haitian people are, because Haitians, they're the most African people on this side of the world, full stop, because our revolution was so early, and it was fought. Slavery was very different in Haiti, whereas like the average lifespan of a slave was 4 to 7 years, so you didn't have many multi-generational slaves. The revolution was fought by people that remembered home. And so, despite us being there, we're very African, and so it's fine that we're not considered Latin. We're not. It's clear. We're very, very African. With that being said, there are people in the Dominican Republic that are also very, very African, but they just have to, but they have to just contend with different things than we have, than we have to. Of course, we have our challenges. We have an entire race of people that are just, we would say mulatto, but that's not a derogatory term for us. We call them mulat. That's just half black, half white, like they've been half black, half white for centuries. They only marry other people that are
Are
also
there-
half black, half white.
Are there benefits, like in Haiti, would you say that there are benefits for being mulatto? I don't want to say the wrong thing, but however you all
100%.
say it. Yes?
100%. Yeah, 100%. 100%. There's huge colorism,
Okay.
but it's different, right? So you still have a power dynamic of very powerful black people, but economically though, it's very light skinned. So factories, businesses, light skinned, politics, dark skin.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the relationship between Dominicans and Haitians is like, I mean, of course, you had the Trujillo, the guy that killed like 30,000 Haitians. Even that it's complex and it's nuanced. I don't think a lot of Dominicans are anti-Haitian. I think a lot of times Dominican politicians use Haitians as scapegoats for whatever problems are going on in the Dominican Republic. And so it's way more nuanced than Dominicans being anti-black.
Got it.
You know.
Got it.
But
I'm
it's
so happy you said
interesting.
that. I'm so happy you said that.
Yeah.
I was nervous. I was like, please don't make DR because DR is like the poster child for anti-blackness.
It's true.
People love being like, oh, what's his name of this stupid ass comedian? The guy, me no black, I'm Dominican. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, anti-blackness exists everywhere, and for some reason, Dominicans always get hit at the brunt of the jokes. That was beautifully said.
And what I was going to say to follow up with that is, in Puerto Rico, which is where I'm from, we're all neighbors. All of the Caribbean is pretty much so close together. And there's also, and a lot of Puerto Ricans don't want to admit this, but there's also a lot of anti-blackness that they pass off as xenophobia because of Dominicans that were coming into Puerto Rico for the fact that it's a U.S. territory. They could potentially pass as U.S. citizens and then be able to get to the U.S. But even so, the ones that come to Puerto Rico to stay in Puerto Rico experience a lot of anti-blackness, even if they don't present as dark skin. And a lot of Puerto Ricans don't want to talk about that.
That's crazy.
Look at how they treat Loíza. Loíza didn't get any relief.
Right.
With all of the hurricanes that just happened. Loíza is a traditionally black city within Puerto Rico. And if you go historically over how relief efforts have come with devastation, Loíza is the last to get any infrastructure reliefs, any aid, anything. And it's not because the Dominicans are there.
But just hearing this right now, for me as a black person, makes me think, and I don't know if this probably sounds crazy, but it makes me think like, okay, I understand that everybody wants to march with us, everybody wants to be with us, but y'all have some other stuff in y'all communities that y'all have to work on first and really do some work before y'all come over here and try to support us. Support yourselves, clear up the anti-blackness there, then you can come over here and help us with our struggle. But it's harder when you're already dealing with your anti-blackness in your community, or like the surface level of it because you're not really digging into it, and then you're trying to come over here and help us with all the stuff that we're dealing with too. It becomes too much.
It's not help, it's survival because I'm black. And
I was about to say that, like that was his point.
It's my and even that comment about the Cubans earlier, all the Cubans I know are black. What happens is we are the result of like a cultural appropriation. So it's very interesting when you think of like how other people within diaspora can migrate to the US. And the difference between a black identity and a black racial identity and a black cultural identity is understood. So a person can be Jamaican and black, a person can be Haitian and black, a person can be Bayesian and black. But when it comes to the three Spanish-speaking Caribbean islands, it is not understood. And I don't know why. And it's because the people that exported the black culture were the cultural appropriation. So imagine if hip hop arrived to your country with only like Mac Miller or who are these other white people. You would think it's white culture. You would think it's white culture.
Makes sense.
Right.
No, you're absolutely
You
right.
look at salsa and look at reggaeton, look at rumba, like cumbia, like it's all the face of white and brown Latinos. And meanwhile, the core of those musical genres is black.
And it's circular.
Activism as well.
Merengue changed. Like the merengue that my grandparents played is merengue típico. There's called a merengue pambiche, which is the one that was exported. Why? Because it was, we want to make sure that it's able to be played in Palm Beach. So it's pambiche. Why? Because they put the big European big band horns and they made it like the sonoras, and they're like, we're just like the Europeans, we're just like the Europeans. Meanwhile, they're killing people for playing that music that look like me. Right? The original way.
Which is why I want to say I completely hear what you're saying, but also I just want to or at least I want to pose the question. It's like the way that I see Blackness is Afro-diasporic. And I say that because I find it interesting whenever people are like, Latinos, y'all messy, fix that before you come over here. I'm like, there are parallels between all of our problems. I'm not saying they're all the same. I think all of our problems all deserve its individual respect with all of the individual circumstances that have individually contributed to them. And when we look across the scale in regards to what Afro-diasporic issues are, it's like if you take away, whatever nation we pertain to, they're all the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like if it's the goal is for Afro-diasporans to have equity, it's like I would desire like more empathy within each other in regards to like what these issues are. You know what I mean? And I feel like that feeds both to your point as well, in that a lot of people, they hear, like my experience in Boston, color is segregated as Boston.
What? Boston's crazy.
Boston's nuts. So in which case, I'm told in the 3rd grade, you're sitting at the black table or the Spanish table? 3rd graders, my peers, And they're like, I'm like, the Spanish table, you mean the table full of black Dominicans? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in which case, they're seeing their blackness as other because they speak a
Because they
language.
speak Spanish.
Yes.
Or because their flag is different. I'm like, we all live in the same hood. We all are systematically, I'm not saying, no, yeah. There's of course nuance there, but like, I'm like, it's just incredible how, we have put these barriers within each other. I'm like, I feel like there needs to be conversations within them that's not being had. And I think collectively it's hurting all of us.
Yeah.
That's just where I'm at.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katelina. Go ahead, Renee.
I think there are barriers there, but I think a lot of the times, I don't feel like the barriers is coming from Black people. I agree with what you said. I think the way I think about it, I'm Pan-African, so I feel that if you Black over there, you Black over here, you still Black. I feel like we're all on the same page. But if I feel like that, and then I'm sitting next to somebody like you feel like that too. But there's people that look like you that don't feel like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I'm not that. The video you was talking about, there are people that's like, no, I'm not Black.
No,
And they're really like against it.
Yeah.
So for people that lean into their Blackness, someone like me, I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm not forcing you to be Black. If you don't want to be Black, that's fine. You'll find out. But
Right.
but I'm Black. I'm Black, and I'm proud to be
find out
Black.
today.
So
Yeah.
like, I think a lot of times like we just have to stop begging and trying to like get people to see like
Our humanity.
yeah,
Their blackness.
like just be Black, join up with other Black people that agree with
Yes.
what you're saying and have the same ideas in mind, and move on from there. Like you can't get everybody to see it.
Yeah.
We've
That's
done
how
that.
I feel.
We've done that historically. One of the Tuskegee Airmen, Esteban Jotese, he was Dominican, but it's like those people that are actually Black, that
Yeah.
say that they're Black, they're here. But what you're encountering are the same people that we have in Dominican Republic or within Afro-Latinidad, within Latinidad, because just because you are Black racially doesn't mean you're on code,
Yeah.
right? So you
Yes.
you encounter our Uncle Ruckuses, and you
Yes.
think that's all of us.
Right. I don't.
Right.
No,
But I
I'm
get what
talking
you're
in general.
saying.
Like the
I don't.
Godfrey,
But
the
I also-
Godfrey joke is because you encounter the Uncle Ruckus.
Oh,
and
it's
they're loud.
Godfrey. That's the guy.
Oh, that's who it is.
I was wondering who it was this whole time.
They're loud.
Interesting too.
Yeah.
But you also see the way that white people treat. I know for me, for instance, like everybody's seen my hair before. I have very big curly hair, and so I've seen the difference in how Black people were treated. I went to an all-white school, majority white school. How Black people were treated as opposed to Spanish people were treated a little better than us. Even the ones that were darker skinned, it was because they had. A lot of them had curlier hair. Their hair texture was different, or they might have more. Like it was. So then for the Black person, it's like it's hard to not get that wall in your head that there's a divide there when you're seeing that, okay, we're in the same struggle, but you're like 2 steps up from me.
But even
So
what
it's
you just
like-
said there, you referred to us by our oppressor. We're
Right.
not Spanish. Those are the people that came to our islands, raped our women, killed everybody, and colonized us. Like, I am Dominican. I don't even mess with Latinidad because Latinidad is anti-Black as hell. But if you have to put a umbrella on it, okay, I'm Latine. Great. Hispanic is another thing. Great. But we're not Spanish. Like, I would never, anybody who looks like me would never be able to get Spanish citizenship. If a person was originally,
I never knew that.
originally, like, they had a great ancestor that was native, like a Taino person with a Espanol, by the 4th generation, that person qualifies for Spanish citizenship because they had enough white blood. by the fourth generation, if your ancestor was a black person under the caste system, you were never getting Spanish citizenship. So it's just like legacies of traumatization of the colonialism that even people say, oh, I'm Spanish, because you hear those Uncle Ruckuses that come over here
They're
and
so
they
loud.
aspire.
They're so fucking loud.
And some of them are white. It's fine. It's all right. And, you know, and like now it's a slur for me to call the whitinos white. Like when I tell you that you're white, you feel attacked.
This because you know we're dwindling down on time, so I want to ask two questions that are really, really important to me. One is that a lot of things that I'm seeing now, people of color and white people have been saying that black people are racist. Right? Like y'all are the racist ones. What you said is racist because we're critiquing or we're pushing back or we're saying or we're making sweeping generalizations about white behavior, et cetera, et cetera. Now this is an interesting conversation to me because it's like before it was like black people get to say whatever they say, respect black women, make room for black people, and now it's like, okay, well y'all got some power now, so y'all are racist. Do you feel that it is one, difficult to engage, or can you see that it could be difficult to engage with black people about black issues, about issues that pertain to people of color? That's the first part. And the second part is do you think that that conversation is warranted, or are they just bullshitting?
My goodness. There's no such thing as reverse racism. There's no reverse colorism. There's no reverse texturism because we're not talking about interpersonal problems. We are talking about the system. And the system follows that while this is also why I don't like BIPOC as a denominator for a bunch of people, because the dark-skinned black experience is not the same thing as the light-skinned dark experience, down to how many people have died in COVID, right? There's a divide along the color lines that we are not talking about. So we say that, oh, black people have this experience. I'm looking like, baby, my dark-skinned black ass has a very different experience than your non-dark-skinned black ass. And the idea that my bringing up something makes me divisive or that makes me racist is your way of gaslighting me and of trying to preserve your own idea of your power. Because this is a power conversation. You're trying to maintain your power by trying to disempower my voice. Right. That's all that is. So I'm looking like, you can take that reverse shit somewhere the fuck else. This is not Uno. This is not Uno. And think about it. Like even in Uno, when you play, how do you play? To the dealer's left, which means that we know which way this shit goes. So even when it reverses, and it reverses again, we say, oh, it's going back the regular way. Hello, that is power in the way that the shit goes. So the idea of a reverse sounds stupid.
But also, are we racist? Because are we racist to call you out on your things, or are you just being uncomfortable by the fact that we're holding you accountable? Or are you uncomfortable by the fact that you benefit from the racism? Because even if I feel like prejudice may be an issue, but even if I will go to another dark-skinned person, become colorist, or if I was to go being racist to an Asian person, my thing is, what can my black ass do to stop that Asian person from living their lives? Because I don't have the power or equity to stop you from getting housing. I don't have the power or equity to give you a job that works your ass to the bone with no benefits and minimum wage as the offer to pay. I don't have the power to allocate your people who look like you in a specific region of the city that has pollution surrounded by it. You know, I don't have access, or I don't have the power to not give you a large amount of percentage of funding for your area that I put all the black and brown people at for their education. So it's like, yes, a black person can say racist things and be prejudiced, but in regards to me understanding racism as power, I have no dog in this fight.
Right. And that's what I agree with. And all those, what you said just there is why I always say, I'm like, black people can't be racist. We can be prejudiced as hell. We can be prejudiced as hell, and I might take that on.
But even with
and
prejudice,
be okay with that. But
it's
we
wrong.
Can't be racist.
But is it prejudice also? Is there some survivalism to it? Because as a black person, how do I explain it? Slavery did its job. There's light-skinned people in my family to the point who you would think they're white, and you get to the point where like, is my prejudice, yes, it's wrong, but is it also a result of me surviving in this white supremacist, colorist society?
It's a reactionary. I feel like our prejudice, black people's prejudice, is reactionary. It's based on the things that we've gone through, the things that keep getting thrown at us, and now that we're reacting, everybody's like, oh, what's going on?
And
as long as I'm alive, I'll never let black guilt become a thing. Because that's what they're trying to make it now.
Yeah.
Black guilt. Like how they have white guilt, they're trying to make us feel guilty about being black.
To
And
silence
it's not
us.
going to
You
happen
to
now.
stop the conversations that already make them feel uncomfortable.
You know, I'm not too sold on the idea that we need to sort of be under this people of color umbrella and need to collaborate with other people for us to advance ourselves. Truthfully, you know, some people do believe that, you know, it's better if we all work together. I don't. I see other communities advancing themselves without even collaborating with anyone else. You know, it's funny. So back when I was a little kid, anybody that was like Mexican looking, you just call Papi. That's Papi. He's over here with his cerveza. He's drunk sometimes. He's standing outside of Home Depot, waiting for a gig. You pay him $50, he go fix anything. That's Papi, right? I went to this place called Union, New Jersey recently, in West New York.
It looks like you said like this far away fucking land.
Yeah, I went to Union, New Jersey, and West New York. Papis everywhere. They own businesses now. So when I was a little kid, Papi had a cerveza, drunk, we made fun of him. He didn't speak any English. Now he's in Union, New Jersey, still doesn't speak English, buying up fixer-uppers because his cousin knows roofing. They know how to handle the, you know, the yard and stuff. They build these houses up. Now they have, Papi has home equity. He's not collaborating with anyone. You know, he doesn't need to, right? And so do we need to? We don't. Right?
But I mean, I don't know. Because I think that Katelina brought up some great points. I think that TaDeo brought up some great points. And we have to acknowledge, once again, one of the elephants in the room is that for black folks, a lot of black folks can't wait to be with somebody who's Latina or Latino. They cannot wait for their curly-headed baby to come through. They cannot wait for their designer pocketbook baby. And when you have people who have like that quiet aspiration for that designer life so that they can live some of their dream through their baby, right? The collaboration, the depth in which they're willing to go into the community, right? I think it betrays them. They betray themselves oftentimes because what's leading you is not about blackness. It's not about necessarily getting that person on or get that person put on. But there's a lot of individual identity pursuits and all of the things associated with that we have to acknowledge. I think it's one of those things that keeps us separate from, black people have made amazing advances in this country. That's first and foremost. But I would also say, from being critical, is that we don't talk about the fact that a lot of these guys, a lot of these rappers in the 90s and the 2000s, all of the video vixens were Dominican women. They were all Puerto Rican women. They were all very light-skinned, biracial women. So we grew up seeing how much we buy into BIPOC, how much we buy into POC, but we don't want to call the thing a thing, because as long as you could be potentially black, it means that I'm not a colorist, it means that I'm not racist, it means that I don't hate myself, and it means that me and my little designer baby, we good. We clear it, we got everybody past the paper bag test, we just cuted in the rest of y'all 4C motherfuckers. And it's a hard pill to swallow, but I do believe that it's so much more difficult when you have a shared language, right? In a country where everybody else speaks English, it's a unifier. Yeah. So people who speak Spanish, it's gonna be a bonding moment regardless of what you look like. Even if people hold on to their colorist ways and, oh no, you're a little bit darker, whatever, I will acknowledge that. But there's something to be said about how closely we can get to each other when we actually do aspire to be further and further away from blackness. Yes. So the POC conversation, I feel like hasn't really evolved, and we haven't held as many people accountable for it, especially if you really wanna get that girl's number. Right? Especially if you really want to get that dude's number or have his baby. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things that's really perverse, and it's a stumbling block. And those are the things that I want people to start talking about a little bit more. So that when we get to the POC conversations, you know, everybody wanted to have Indian in their family. We were all trying to be POC. You know what I'm saying? So like, what's good? Let's have an honest conversation about what's happening here. And then I think when we were saying clean up our own mess, and y'all clean up your own mess, I think like everybody got mess to clean up. Yeah. It's just that at this point we can acknowledge that we saw something special happen, once again, because we had somebody die in the middle of the street. Is it gonna take that over and over and over and over and again for us to say like maybe there's something there? Because if you aspire to have that POC in your sheets, right? Or that black man in your sheets, or that black, whatever that case is, however we're fetishizing in the moment, that is not enough to legislate. That is not enough to move the dial forward, right? We need to bring things out into the open. And I want, the next time that we have this fucking conversation, I want to see people who are from other places in the world who get to fall under this umbrella to come to the conversation and be honest about your fucking anti-Blackness. Keep that shit real so that we can move forward, because Black people, we talk about our own shit. We've been doing this shit for years. That's why everybody here is Black, because everybody was like, I want to have the conversation, but everybody else is running away. So when you're running towards these POCs, remember that they're running away from you sometimes. So you need to get your shit together. That's a Black people message
But
right
that's
there.
also to Jimmy's point, right?
Exactly.
Like the idea of let's work together, I think it sounds good in theory. But in practice, what it looks like is we lean towards power. Look at the Black
We lean
movement.
towards power.
The Black movement moved Black men forward. That's what we did. Look at the women's movement. It moved white women forward because there is power already among the ways in which they are already connected to white, male, patriarchal, capitalistic bullshit, right? There's already that connection. So there's a lack of desire to work from the margins, because that's where we actually would have to work. You have to work with the most marginalized people, because a rising tide lifts all boats, but everybody is so interested in what they want for themselves while being able to go ahead and make those POCs, right? Like, I'm Black, but I'm gonna make me a POC. I wanna be over there where I can be as far from Black as I can be. And we're doing all of this stuff and we're saying, let's work together. And I'm looking like, but how does that work, right? Because what we know that history has taught us is that we will work from the space of power and not from the space of marginalization.
I don't want to let white supremacy off the hook here, because
White
going back,
supremacy is the reason for the season.
Exactly, we'll end on that.
going back to your point, within that little community, it's the unifier is not the language, it's anti-Blackness, because it's not the Black poppies that are in that. It's not any person that looks like me, and it almost seems like white supremacy is okay with letting everybody else get up except for people that have melanin and African features, because if you read the history of this country, what happened in 1919, we did that. We were building our place all over. Everybody knows about Tulsa, but they don't know about Elaine. They don't know about Wilmington. They don't know about everywhere. Everybody just learned about all of the towns that have highways going through them.
That's true.
The anti-Blackness is so perverse that the second that we do come together and unify, there has been external circumstances, meaning white supremacy, come in and take that away from us. And you're allowed to come up in any other diasporic derived group as long as you swear fealty to white supremacy and double down on your anti-Blackness. So they don't mind that the poppies come up as long as they're the white poppies, as long as they're the racially ambiguous ones, or the ones that maybe look a little more indigenous. The second that you have a community, like the Garifuna community, when they try to establish something, y'all are Black, y'all got to get out of here, and they destroy their stuff too.
Exactly. And y'all speak Spanish too? Listen, that's a great note to end on. Thank you for that, TaDeo. Thank you so much, Elijahda. Thank you so much, Dr. Kristina. Thank you, Juice. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Dr. Donna. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Eliana, my amazing co-host. Thank you for all of y'all for watching. Be sure to subscribe to this motherfucker. Hit that bell. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on TikTok @TheStrangerFruit. And we will see your asses next time.